These days, there seems to be just more and more people getting into bass fishing. And with that being said, our lakes and our rivers and our ponds all seem to be getting extremely crowded. It seems like every time I go out fishing, there are boats already out there, no matter if it's on the weekend or if it's during the week. So with that being said, we as fishermen have to learn how to catch pressured bass. And so today I want to talk about 3 concepts that will help you to catch a lot more bass on pressured bodies of water. So stay tuned, it's going to be a good one. This video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. In simple words, it's an app that helps you to go out and catch bass a lot quicker. Once you download the app, you can actually select the lake that you're going to be fishing, and you can actually input the data that is happening on that lake when you're out there. For instance, you can put in the water temperature, the water clarity, whether that lake has vegetation, or if you're fishing in a protected area or a windy area. Now, once you make these selections, the app will spit out lures and strategies that you can use to go out and catch bass. These lures and strategies are based upon thousands of different data points from hundreds of different tournaments. There's a paid version of this app and there is a free version of this app. So if you guys want to download it, there's a link down below in the description. Click on that link and download the Deep Dive app today. So for those of you who don't know, I actually grew up in Ohio, and I actually still live here in Ohio. And the thing about Ohio is it's pretty much known across the nation for just having very difficult bodies of water to fish. We have like a lot of smaller lakes, but we still have a ton of fishermen. So we have very pressured bodies of water. And over the years, I have found that there are 3 things that help me to catch bass locally, but these are 3 things that really help me to catch bass across the nation. Pretty much anytime I've gone out of state, I've fished in really big tournaments where there's been 200, 225 boats, and that is a lot of guys fishing. And all that pressure, it does certain things to the fish. And so these 3 concepts have really helped me, and I think that they can help you as well. So let's just dive right into it here. And the first one is going to be, you have to think about opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to your lure choice. All of us, we all kind of grow up learning a lot of the same things. We all learn about throwing a 1/2 ounce spinnerbait or a 3/8 ounce jig, right? We all kind of learn about using these lures that are kind of in the center of the spectrum. But when it comes to your lure choice, again, I want you to think of opposite sides of the spectrum. So when it comes to the size of your lure, sometimes downsizing can really help you to catch a lot of bass in pressured bodies of water. That's something that a lot of us already know, but something that can also help you to catch a lot of bass in those pressured bodies of water is actually upsizing your lure. And I've actually seen that upsizing can be better than downsizing. And I have, like I said, I grew up in Ohio. I remember fishing a tournament one time where it was in the middle of summer, pressured body of water, and a couple of guys that I was fishing with were basically throwing a shaky head all day. And one of them zeroed in this tournament, and another guy caught 1 fish. Well, in this tournament, I actually happened to pick up a 10.5 inch Zoom Old Monster worm. And guys, I'm fishing a 10.5 inch worm for like 12 to 14 inch fish, right? Like, they're not big fish by any means, but guess what? I actually came in with the limit. I did really well in this tournament. I think I finished first out of the money, but I did really well. And when I told my buddies that I was fishing this giant worm, they couldn't believe it. They literally couldn't believe it, because here they were downsizing, they were throwing a shaky head, and they hardly got bit at all. And we were fishing in a lot of the same areas. And I've seen this more than once fishing outside of the country, actually. There's been times where I fished in places like Florida where using a bigger swim bait instead of using something that is smaller, like a small swim bait, can actually get you more bites, and they tend to be quality fish as well. So think opposite sides of the spectrum. Just don't think about downsizing. Also think about upsizing your lure. Now, another thing that when it comes to opposite sides of the spectrum is the weight of your lure. You know, if you're fishing a Texas rig, a lot of us pick up a 3/8 ounce Texas rig or a 1/2 ounce Texas rig. So again, you can downsize, for instance, going down to maybe a 1/4 ounce or an 1/8 ounce. That's going to get you a lot more bites. But that again is something that a lot of guys might already be thinking of. So something else you can do, upsize that weight. Instead of doing that 3/8 or 1/2 ounce, actually go up to a 3/4 or 1 ounce weight. This is really going to kind of plummet very fast in front of these pressured bass, and because of that, they're actually just going to react to it. They're not going to actually see it, they're going to react to it, and that as well can get you a lot more bites. So anytime it comes down to lure choice, one of the biggest things you can do is simply think of opposite sides of the spectrum. Think smaller, think bigger, think less weight, think more weight. That is really going to help you to get more bites in areas where there's just a ton of guys. Now, speaking of that, the second concept, this is another one that I kind of developed actually not only in Ohio, but actually as I fished outside of the country. This is something that I developed a lot, and that is anytime naturally I think to stop fishing, maybe I'm working up a creek and it gets really shallow. If I think to stop fishing and I want to turn the boat around, those are the times when you actually need to just keep on going and seeing what is past that area. Because a lot of times when I think, oh, I need to turn around, a lot of other guys are actually also thinking that exact same thing. So if 5 or 6, 10 guys are inside of a creek in a single day, they all hit a really shallow flat, they all say, all right, time to turn around. They're all gonna turn around. You might be the only boat that continues to go on past that flat. This actually happened to me at the James River down in Virginia. I was fishing a Bassmaster Open. There was 200 plus guys in this tournament. It was in the middle of summer, so it was just a very hot time of the year. And I remember I was fishing in this particular creek, actually on the James River. I came up to this flat, just like I had just talked about, and in my mind, I thought, I need to turn around. I need to just turn around. I need to start going to somewhere else, because really I hadn't even caught any fish anyways. But in my mind, I also thought, you know what? There's probably other guys who have hit this exact same flat and decided to turn around. And so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go through this flat. And I had to like get up on my trolling motor. I had to raise my trolling motor. I had to push over this flat. But once I got over this flat, it actually dropped down all the way into 8 feet of water, which is really deep for this creek that I was fishing. And guys, I got into this creek, and after I got over that flat, I started catching a ton of bass. I was actually in this tournament, I was able to catch both my limits of bass in this little area, and there was just a ton of fish in this area. And the big thing is that nobody else was fishing with me during this tournament. And I think the big thing there was that they stopped at that flat. Now, a flat is one thing, but this could be a number of different things. Again, anytime you think to yourself, it's time to turn around, just think everybody else is thinking that exact same thing. So anytime you think to turn around, keep pressing forward, keep on going, because that might be the key for you to catch a lot of bass, is just continuing on and actually fishing in areas where other guys are not fishing. Now, the third big concept when it comes to fishing pressured bodies of water is that you have to realize that a lot of fishing pressure is going to affect the bass. It's actually going to move bass. And one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of guys will abandon their area when it comes to maybe a tournament. For instance, that you might find that you're fishing, you know, in practice, catching fish a certain way, and then you get there in the tournament, there's guys all around, and you end up abandoning your area because you're either not catching fish or you just don't like being around a lot of other guys. And what I've realized is that bass will make just small movements in those areas. A lot of times we think, man, we need to get out of here. The bass have completely left. And a lot of times I have found that the bass just make really small movements. It might be 10 feet, it might be 15 feet, it might be 30 yards at most. Sometimes just making very small movements can really help you to catch a lot of bass. I was fishing a tournament locally where we were flipping and pitching pads, lily pads, and we were catching fish on the outside of these pads. Well, guess what? There was probably about 60 other boats in this area, and everybody was doing the exact same thing. And after a while, you know, we had caught a few fish, but the fishing really slowed down, and we kind of figured that the pressure was really starting to get to these fish. Well, the guy that I was fishing with this day actually decided to start flipping way up into the pad. So instead of concentrating on that outside 5 feet, he was actually pitching his bait as far up into the pads as he could. I mean, his bait was probably landing in like 8 inches to maybe a foot of water. But guess what? That is exactly where the bass moved. They went from that edge and they just simply pushed deeper into the pads. And he started catching a ton of fish this day. And we were around guys that were just not catching anything. And it was a simple movement of just pitching deeper into the cover. I've actually seen this exact same thing kind of happen when you're fishing off the bank too. You know, sometimes you find maybe a ledge or a point or a rock pile where there's a lot of fish, but it's on a very obvious place. And sometimes what happens is a lot of other guys find that place, and maybe during a tournament you come back and there's guys fishing all over it, and those fish will just move away from that area. And a lot of guys will completely abandon it, where again, those bass might only move 10, 15, 20 feet. So instead of being on this side of the rock pile, now they might be on the opposite side of a rock pile. Or maybe they push up onto a flat and they're hanging around a different rock pile that you didn't even know was there. A lot of times bass aren't gonna make huge movements. They're just gonna make very small movements. So I hope that those 3 concepts will help you to catch bass. I know that they have helped me to catch a ton of bass. Now, speaking of downsizing your lures or using bigger lures, I'm actually kind of really starting to learn the glide bait, and it's a really fun technique. I'm gonna leave a link for a video right here of a series that I'm doing that's all about the glide bait. So if you guys are interested in watching that, click that link. Also, don't forget to check out that deep dive app. I'll see you guys in the next video.